In the Middle East, the United Nations says that it's had to halt its humanitarian operations in Gaza. It comes after the Israeli military issued a new evacuation order for the area where aid workers were operating from. The UN is the primary aid distributor inside the territory, which has been devastated by 10 months of war between Israel and Hamas. The UN agency UNRWA, one of the key humanitarian groups working in Gaza, spoke about the deteriorating situation.
The space that people have been confined to is so minimal. There are tanks in areas that used to be designated as safe areas. And this is just another testament to there being nowhere safe in the Gaza Strip. People have nowhere to go. There is nowhere to find safety. It's very limited access to humanitarian resources because the humanitarian operations are also being displaced within these evacuation orders. And the humanitarian response here is being completely strangled and limited to our ability of what we can do.
Well, elsewhere in the region, medics say one Palestinian was shot dead by an Israeli settler and 5 others were killed in an Israeli airstrike in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the strike in Nur Shams camp east of the city of Tulkarm and said its target was what it described as a command room of a terror cell. Let's speak to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell. First of all, Yolande, tell us more about these incidents in the West Bank.
So certainly Nur Shams is an urban refugee camp in the north of the West Bank. It has seen successive Israeli military raids, particularly since the start of the war in Gaza. And we're hearing from Palestinian health officials that there were 5 people who were killed in this airstrike on a house in the camp. 2 of them were children aged 15 and 16. This is where the Israeli military has said a command center had been set up by Palestinian armed groups. This was an attack that took place about 10:30 local time last night. Also last night there's videos on social media where you can see that people are rushing around in this small village close to Bethlehem in the south of the West Bank called Wadi Rachal, and there are these bursts of gunfire. This is where local people say that armed settlers entered into the village late at night. They started attacking homes. When men went outside, 1 man was shot and killed. 3 other people were wounded. There has been a real increase in Israeli military raids in the West Bank since the start of the war in Gaza, with the Israeli military saying it's acting against what it calls terrorist groups. And at the same time, there has been this surge in violence by extremist settlers attacking Palestinians and taking over more land.
Yolande, for the moment, thank you very much. Let's go live now to Ramallah and speak to Mustafa Bouti, General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative. Dr Bouti, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News. In Gaza, the IDF say that they give warnings to civilians when they're about to launch a strike. To what extent, if any, does that happen in the West Bank?
Well, I don't believe they do that in Gaza, but they definitely don't do any of that in the West Bank. People suddenly find themselves subjected to airstrikes. It is important to remember that West Bank is an occupied territory by Israeli army since 57 years. And when Israel uses airstrikes against occupied people, it is a total violation of international law. Since the 7th of October, Israel conducted 80 airstrikes on different places in the West Bank, mainly in refugee camps like Nur Shams and Tulkarm refugee camp. The outcome is that 640 people have been killed, including no less than 170 children. And all these 80 airstrikes, during these attacks, there were no warnings whatsoever.
Israel says that the target in the West Bank was a command room of a terror cell, is how they've described it. To what extent are the talks... Sorry, to answer that.
Well, I don't think 15 and 16-year children are terror leaders. I think Israel lies, and they continuously lie. And the biggest lie here is that Netanyahu claims that he wants to have peace, but at the same time, Netanyahu does not want to end the war in Gaza. by continuously undermining all negotiations. And now he wants to expand the war into the West Bank.
But regarding those talks, though, Hamas have not even turned up, have they?
No, they have. They've been in Cairo and they have received all the proposals and they've discussed them and they responded to them.
But they've not done so directly, have they? It's been via other conduits.
No. We never had. Israel would not sit with Hamas to negotiate. Neither would the Americans. All the time, negotiations happen through mediators, which are Egypt and Qatar. So nothing changed. Hamas was there. But Netanyahu is undermining this is not my opinion. This is even the opinion of many people from the security Israeli apparatus and from the negotiating team who are leaking to the media that Netanyahu is undermining the negotiations continuously because he doesn't want to achieve an agreement. He wants this war to continue. He wants to keep his occupation of Gaza. And he knows that the end of the war is the end of his political career. And he doesn't even care about the Israeli prisoners who are dying because of Israeli bombardment as well.
And of course, these negotiations do go on and they're supposed to result in the hostage release as well as a ceasefire. Dr Mustafa Bouti from the Palestinian National Initiative, thank you for your time.